Miami floods when it doesn't rain. Houston floods every year like clockwork. New York subway floods every time there's a storm. And it's getting worse. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey dumped 50 inches of rain on Houston. The city became a lake, $50 billion in damage. But Harvey wasn't even a strong hurricane when it hit land. It was the rain, and Houston turned that rain into a catastrophe. American cities flood easily, not because we get more rain than other countries, not because climate change alone explains it, but because of how we built our cities, the choices we made about pavement, drainage, and what to do with water. Today, we're breaking down exactly why. The concrete epidemic, the drainage disaster, the wetland destruction, and why fixing it requires confronting decades of decisions that made flooding inevitable. Let's dive in. American cities are covered in impermeable surfaces, concrete, asphalt, rooftops, parking lots, miles of surfaces that don't absorb water. When rain falls on soil or grass, most of it soaks into the ground. It filters down slowly. It replenishes groundwater. But when rain falls on concrete, it has nowhere to go but sideways, fast, all at once. Every drop becomes runoff. Think about a typical suburban development. Houses, driveways, streets, sidewalks, the Walmart parking lot, the strip mall, the office park. We've paved everything. Here's the number. In many American cities, 30 to 50% of land area is impermeable surface. In some cities, it's over 60%. We've created environments where rain can't soak in, so it all runs off. When Houston was wetlands and prairies, 90% of rain soaked into the ground. Today, maybe 20%. The rest runs off into streets, sewers, and bayous, overwhelming everything. Los Angeles, Phoenix, Atlanta, Miami, every sprawling American city has paved over the natural landscape so thoroughly that water has nowhere to go but into floods. And we keep building more. Every new subdivision, every shopping center, every highway, more impermeable surface, more runoff, more flooding. So we paved everything, but we built drainage systems to handle it, right? We did, and that's part of the problem. American cities use gray infrastructure for drainage: pipes, sewers, storm drains, concrete channels. The idea: collect water fast and send it away. But when you collect water from all over a city and channel it into a few pipes, you create massive surge flows. All that water hits the drainage system at once, and if it can't handle it, which it usually can't, you get flooding. We designed these systems for historical rainfall patterns, but rainfall patterns are changing. Storms are more intense. More rain falls in shorter periods. Our drainage systems, built for yesterday's weather, can't cope with today's weather. Houston's bayou system is a perfect example. During Harvey, so much water hit the bayou so fast they overflowed catastrophically. The system designed to prevent flooding became the flooding. Worse, in many older cities, storm drains and sewage pipes are the same system. When it rains heavily, raw sewage floods into streets, basements, and waterways. We built systems that guarantee flooding and sewage contamination. Meanwhile, other countries do it differently. The Netherlands builds water plazas, open spaces that become retention ponds during storms. Copenhagen builds parks and bioswales that absorb water. Singapore has massive underground storage. These systems work with water instead of just flushing it away. They store it, slow it, absorb it. We chose the pike it away approach, and now we're paying for it. Now let's talk about what we destroyed: wetlands, nature's flood control system. Wetlands are like sponges. They absorb water during floods and release it slowly. They filter pollutants. They're literally designed by nature to handle too much water. Houston has lost over half its wetlands since the 1990s. Miami destroyed 90% of its original wetlands. New Orleans is built on drained swampland. Why? To build suburbs, shopping centers, highways. Wetlands were seen as wasted land, swamps that needed improvement. But those wetlands were doing a job. When we removed them, we removed the city's natural flood protection. Then we acted surprised when floods got worse. The Katy Prairie west of Houston absorbed floodwater for thousands of years. We paved huge portions for suburbs and shopping centers. Now, when it rains, all that water runs straight into the city. Miami, built on the edge of the Everglades, has been draining and developing it for a century. Now, Miami floods at high tide even when it's sunny, because we destroyed the natural systems that managed water. We knew this was a bad idea. Wetland scientists warned us for decades, but development was more profitable than conservation, and now we're spending billions trying to recreate what we destroyed. Here's where everything compounds: sprawl. American cities sprawl across enormous areas, multiplying the flooding problem. When cities are compact, you have less impermeable surface per capita. But American sprawl gives every family a house on a big lot, a driveway, a wide suburban street near massive parking lots. The impermeable surface per person is enormous. Houston sprawls over 10,000 square miles. When it rains across that area, you're talking incomprehensible volumes of water all trying to drain at once. No infrastructure can handle that. And here's what doesn't get talked about enough. Flooding isn't equal. Rich neighborhoods get protected. Poor neighborhoods get flooded. After Harvey, the neighborhoods that flooded worst? Predominantly Black and Latino areas on Houston's east side, working class areas near industrial zones. These are the areas where flood control infrastructure was never built adequately. Wealthier neighborhoods got better drainage, better elevation, better protection, not because they deserve it more, but because they have political power and money. This pattern repeats everywhere. New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward, Miami's Liberty City. Floodwater follows the path of least political resistance through poor neighborhoods. Think about a worker at a Houston warehouse near the ship channel. When it floods, their workplace floods. They can't get to work. They might live in an apartment that floods because it's in the only place they could afford rent. They didn't choose to live in a floodplain. They live there because that's where cheap housing is. And cheap housing is in floodplains because we allowed development in dangerous areas and didn't protect them. So we paved everything, destroyed wetlands, built inadequate drainage, and sprawled across floodplains. Now climate change is making it all worse. Storms that used to drop 3 inches now drop 6. Hurricanes stall over cities. 100-year floods happen every few years now. Houston has had 3 500-year floods in the last decade. That's not probability, that's a new normal. The weather we designed our infrastructure for no longer exists. And it's not just rain. Miami floods at high tide because sea level has risen enough that the ocean pushes into the drainage system backwards. They're spending billions on pumps and raising roads, but they can't raise everything, and sea level keeps rising. Some American cities are probably unsustainable in their current form. New Orleans below sea level, Miami on porous limestone with the ocean rising, Houston sprawling across a floodplain. But we keep building as if nothing's changed. New subdivisions and floodplains, new infrastructure designed for yesterday's weather. Every new parking lot increases runoff. Every new subdivision paves more land. And we keep approving them because short-term development pressure overrides long-term flood risk. So what's the solution? First, stop making it worse. Stop building in floodplains. Stop paving wetlands. Stop approving developments that increase impermeable surface without mitigation. This is politically hard, but if we keep building in ways that increase flooding, no infrastructure can save us. Second, green infrastructure. Rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavement, green roofs. These work. They reduce runoff at the source instead of trying to pipe it all away. Philadelphia has saved millions by replacing gray infrastructure with green. They require new developments to manage stormwater on-site. Third, restore wetlands. Buy back floodplain land and let it flood naturally. Turn former developments into parks and wetlands that absorb water. It's expensive up front, but cheaper than repeated flood damage. Fourth, climate-proof our infrastructure. Design drainage systems for tomorrow's rainfall, not yesterday's. Build for the weather we're going to get. This means bigger pipes, more storage, better pumps. It's expensive, but cheaper than flooding. Fifth, managed retreat from the most dangerous areas. Some places shouldn't be built on. Some neighborhoods need to relocate. This is the hardest conversation, but it's necessary. And acknowledge this is a long-term project. It'll take decades of sustained investment in policy changes, but we can do it. American cities flood easily because we built them to flood. We paved over natural absorption. We destroyed wetlands. We built drainage systems that don't work. We sprawled across floodplains. We did all this knowing it would cause problems, but development was profitable, and flooding seemed like someone else's problem. Now it's everyone's problem. Houston floods, Miami floods, New York floods, and it's getting worse as climate change intensifies storms and raises sea levels. But this is fixable. The Netherlands lives below sea level and doesn't flood catastrophically. Singapore manages monsoons brilliantly. Copenhagen turns rainstorms into temporary parks. We have the technology, we have the examples. We just need the political will to stop making it worse and start making it better. Every time it rains, American cities gamble, and we're losing that gamble more often every year. The next time your city floods, remember, this isn't an act of God. It's the result of choices. Choices about concrete and wetlands and drainage and sprawl. Choices we made and choices we can change. Has your city flooded? What happened? What needs to change? Drop your flood stories in the comments, because until we acknowledge the scale of this problem, we can't fix it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.